after our program, if you are interested in learning more, there's a lot of information on Churchill's website, also on Churchill Future's website. And then the next conditional use hearing, there's been 2 or 3 so far, is next Monday. And it's open to the public. It's more of like a webinar-based format. And I'll send out these links tomorrow in a follow-up email. But yeah, without further ado, we have Sandy and Ralph here. And sorry, I'm pulling up their bios. Ralph Waller is a retired transit worker who worked in contact compliance and training and organizational development. Currently, during the school year, he works part-time at the Workforce Development Program as the Workforce Development Program coordinator for a private school. Ralph is a graduate of Slippery Rock University with a BS in business administration, finance. He lives with his wife in Churchill. And then Sandy Fox is also here. Sandy is a licensed clinical social worker that has worked in community mental health in Southern West Virginia, Western Psych, Allegheny Neuropsychiatric Institute, and in private practice in the Pittsburgh area. She continues to maintain a small private practice as a psychotherapist. Sandy's also been an unpaid community organizer and activist since 2005, beginning with her advocacy for National Improved Medicare for All.
Medicare.
Oh, excuse me, Medicare for All. She continues to be on the steering committee of the Western PA Coalition for Single Payer Healthcare, which she founded in 2006 and with other community members. A new chapter in Sandy's activism has begun in Churchill, where she has lived since 2015. With the news this year of a proposal before Borough Council of an Amazon distribution center. Sandy is co-chair with her neighbor Ruthie Ray of the Government Agencies and Allies Committee of Churchill Future, a grassroots group of Churchill residents which spontaneously formed this spring in opposition to the proposed warehouse development. These are photos of like the current Westinghouse site and then the proposed development on the right. But yeah, I'm gonna stop presenting and go ahead.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Annie, for inviting us, our group here. I know Susan Sterrett was on initially and will come back onto the call. She's also a part of the opposition to the Amazon project and lives right around the corner from me. And Susan is also the brainchild of the Plan B that was presented to Churchill Borough Council in March of this year for a solar powered microgrid, which the council pretty much ignored, acting as if there is no Plan B, this is it, which is not the case. There could be other things if they open themselves up to it, and if the owner of the property opened themselves up to it. Even though the zoning change happened in November 2020, most residents that I have talked to knew nothing about this until a neighbor sent a letter informing people, paid for by, through his own pocket, to all the residents in Churchill, warning them of what was going on. And this is pretty typical of Amazon and how they function when they come into a community, that they require secrecy by the municipality in terms of who it is that the development is for. They also ask for tax breaks and incentives. So when we found out in March through this letter, residents, neighbors started talking to one another. We met people that we lived next to or near to and didn't know. This is actually a very interesting experience from a sociological perspective, in my opinion, how impending disaster can bring a community together. But it has, so that's the upside of all of this. And we formed a grassroots group pretty quickly called Churchill Future. We decided to, divide into committees, and we have done a lot of outreach in the process. Now we're in the period of public hearing. We've had 3 sessions thus far. And the next one is a week from today, starting at 8 p.m. And, as mentioned, anyone can listen to these if you're interested. Some of it is fascinating, some of it's boring, and everywhere in between. But I think the next one will be especially interesting because I believe the next witness to be called by the developer, which is Hillwood Development out of Dallas, Texas, is a man, Joe Sabato, who is a senior consultant for Epsilon Associates out of New England. And he is an air quality expert, supposedly. And his draft reports and his later reports are posted on the borough website. I have been fascinated with the air quality piece of it, and I filed as an objector. Any resident could if they were considered to have standing, and that was left pretty vague. But I am, less than 1,000 feet as the crow flies from the site, so I certainly considered that sufficient. And I will be focusing in my testimony on the impact on people's health of diesel emissions. Now, I'm not an expert, in this area, but because I live close by, it will have an impact on my health and my husband's health. Now, people who have asthma and people who have heart conditions are at higher risk for premature death from the asthma or from heart attacks with diesel emissions. So I think that qualifies both of us, but I'll be speaking. But in the meantime, at the next hearing in a week, the air quality expert, I expect, will probably take up most of the night, because in addition to his presentation, the attorney for Churchill Future, Dwight Ferguson, will be cross-examining him. And he's really, I've been very impressed with his skills in cross-examination. And then that will be followed by any objector, of which there are about 20 residents who filed as objectors, who have the opportunity to cross-examine. And we're not limited in our time. I have 6 pages of questions that I want to ask this person. But many of those will probably be asked by others. So I may be left with a few, but I'm very angry. I'm very angry. And I think Ralph probably feels similarly. I'll let him speak for himself. But most of us are furious about how this happened and want to do everything in our power to stop it. The air quality is one thing. The traffic will be horrible. The loss of 1,400 trees unconscionable. But Ralph, you want to chime in?
No, I think Sandy gave you a good overview of what's going on. I share her sentiments, especially on the air quality. I kind of really feel for the people who live on Greensburg Pike. When you have 18-wheelers coming past your home, probably in 2-minute intervals. So they'll be staging there and they'll be idling there. Not only do they come to the front of their homes, because there's a wetland and they go through the Greenberg's Pike gate, they cannot go directly to the facility. So now they'll wrap around in the back of their homes. So you have people who are sitting in their backyard. Now they'll be looking at 18-wheelers and they were looking at a building that it will be 100 feet tall. So right now, the existing building there, if you've ever seen them, they're 55 feet tall. They're going to double the height of that building just about. And so with the air quality, the congestion, the stormwater runoff, so all those concerns, I think, impact the community. We have two schools, one for disabled children. There's a Woodland Hills High School that's probably less than 1,000 feet away. And it appalls me that no buffer zones were created for these homes and these schools. And so all those are concerns of mine. I think they said just the noise impact. I think their noise specialist, he made the comment that, well, people who live there can figure out ways to mask the sound. So how do you mask a sound if you're trying to watch a TV show? How do you mask a sound if you have a crying infant or a crying child Or how do you mask a sound that may put you at risk because you don't hear a smoke alarm? So all those things concern me. It's like you have no consideration for the people who live here, only just getting this project done.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you, Ralph. I want to add too that the developer has estimated that there will be over 600, and it's closer to 700 tractor trailer trips a day into and out of this site. At least one every 2 minutes, probably more. I think this is a conservative estimate.
Conservative
Conservative
estimate.
meaning low. And it's 24/7, 365 days a year.
Right.
Um,
And just to think about even too, this is the amount of traffic. I mean, we want jobs in this area, which is like just another use, another kind of project should go in there. I mean, to have another 1,000 to 1,500 employees and 700 trucks going in and out of that property. I think the traffic is going to be terrible for the residents here.
yes.
I think those who live along William Penn Highway, they'll be hoping and praying they can just get out of the driveway.
Mhm. And the jobs, I mean, anyone who's read about Amazon or listened to the news knows that these jobs are not what most people would consider good jobs. Amazon is as Representative Summer Lee has tactfully put it, not an honorable employer. And that's a nice way to say it. I mean, there's a high rate of suicide among Amazon employees. The time off task and difficulty even taking a break to use the restroom. I had a client as a psychotherapist who worked for Amazon last year and had to leave because she became suicidal. I mean, I told her, this is not just you. This is, it's all over, the internet. So, they're non-union. They engage in anti-union tactics in terms of intimidation. They have a hire to fire strategy so that people don't stay long. The turnover rate is 150% a year. So the wages stay low. They start at $15 an hour. So these are also jobs that, according to Amazon, they intend to replace with automation and robots within the next 10 years. So, you could say these are temporary jobs. There's a question from Marion Cook. I'm seeing, how would Plan B compare in terms of jobs and tax revenue, which are presumably what the township cares about? Of course, those are very good questions. 1,000 to 1,500 temporary jobs. Plan B, a solar microgrid, is likely not to create as many jobs on site. But if you think about the jobs that are created with the solar panels, the construction of the microgrid, which can be done on the hard space, leaving the green space and the trees intact, accounts for a lot. Also, Churchill does not have a deficit. Churchill, in fact, is in the black. They don't have a deficit. And the school district is slated to get about $14 million, Ralph, is it, this year?
Yeah, I think about
Yeah.
12, 14.
Yeah,
I can't remember exactly.
from the CARES Act. Their deficit has been running $4 million a year, so they'll be fine. There are other ways to make up for it that are respectful of the land and humane. Susan, I'm glad you were able to get on, because the question was about Plan B, if you see it in the chat room. And since it was your Plan B, I'd love for you to answer that if you could. This is Susan Sterrett, who's from Churchill. You're on mute, Susan.
I'm more relaxed now than when I left, because I was about to talk to council. Oh, now that's over. Yeah, what's the question?
How would let's go up now. It's in the chat. How would Plan B, and it's the solar microgrid, compare in terms of jobs and tax revenue, which are presumably what the township cares about? and then there's more to it, but that's the beginning of the question.
Yeah, so it wasn't that specific, but the idea was to look at it as how could, this seems an enviable thing to have, you know, that much space right in the middle of your community, and what kinds of things would help us. We're supposed to be planning to be more resilient. We just signed on to some sort of county level hazard mitigation plan. And so the idea that you would have a microgrid is for the positive part. Now, how many jobs it would create? Probably not a whole lot directly. However, we were thinking that that there are some businesses that really depend on electricity not being interrupted. So for instance, anything with fresh vegetables, some sort of medical, you know, who are the crucial electrical loads when there's an outage? And so the idea would be, I can't say ahead of time exactly what's going to happen, but the idea would be that you're creating this thing that's a community resource because it's going to give you resiliency in extreme weather. And so yeah, I mean, it wasn't a final plan. It was a suggestion to look at it a little differently rather than, look, we got to get tax revenue out of this, saying, this is an incredible resource. What kinds of things would make our whole community better? And it's not just solar. I mean, microgrids can be anything. In fact, the one at the airport's actually a lot of natural gas. So it might be wind, but wind and solar together often are a good renewable combination. The idea of a microgrid is in the controls and how it can, they're being used. Well, you have to sort of see the examples, but communities now, federal money is now being available for communities to do this because it makes them much more resilient to extreme weather events. And these, yeah, so it wasn't, I don't know, I didn't answer the question because I don't know how many. It depends on the design of it. And the idea was that it would have this sort of ripple effect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know, I want to mention, Susan, that in addition to being a distinguished professor of the philosophy of science, if I got that right, you were also a trained engineer.
Oh yeah, I worked as an engineer. So I've just been following this. I think it's, I'm really interested in sort of the connections between society and technology. And the grid, anything that's a big technology like that, like communications or utilities, bring up these questions of how political power and the technology are intertwined. And so the electrical grid is one of these things where they're looking to try and upgrade it, which will mean charging a whole bunch of money. Like people will probably have to pay a lot more for electricity in the future. But does it have to be that way? Actually, it doesn't, not if it's more, well, I could go into a whole thing, but but the idea is that there's a lot of social issues involved with being, having some control, community having some kind of control. Yeah, I'm sorry, I more than answered your question. I gave a lecture, sorry.
I love hearing you talk about this, Susan. I've learned a lot from you. I'm looking at some of the questions here, some of the others. Yeah. Is it true that council member Diane Law and others have resigned over this? Diane Law is still on council, but there was there was a Diana Yankees who I saw at one of the protests, the second protest we had, and she said, yes, she did resign over this. And then there was a Don DeFranco who also differed on this and left.
Sorry, Diane Law resigned?
No, she did not. That was that was a rumor. It's not true. Or at least she was probably, no, she was at the last public hearing, I believe. I remember seeing her.
Awesome chat.
Okay, why doesn't council oppose this if this is what people want? Ralph, you interested in taking that one?
Why doesn't, no, because I'm baffled.
I know, that's why I gave it to you.
I'm baffled by why this is what the people want. I think, and you know, all honest, I don't know, like I sort of like, I didn't come on as early as as Sandy and Susan. But I think that Hillwood sold them a bill of goods. And I just think they came in with a lot of fluff. And I think that it was in the middle of the pandemic. They had no input from the citizens at that time. We weren't aware of it. And I think they sold them a song and dance, so everything would be good. And who wouldn't? If you think about it, 1,000 jobs are coming to your community. That sounds great. Yeah. Think of the tax revenue. It all sounds great. But without really considering and digging into, I think they just failed in their due diligence to really challenge Hillwood as to like, how's this really going to impact the quality of life for our residents? And I don't think that happened on the front end.
Mhm. Thank you. That was well put. Ralph. I see another question from Lois Drumheller. Because Churchill allowed this as a conditional use under their zoning, they are duty bound to accept it. I don't say this as someone who agrees, but I've seen their zoning use table. And I'm wondering, Susan, if you would be interested in that.
Oh, well,
question.
it has to meet all the zoning conditions, and it doesn't.
Mhm.
There's a whole bunch of rules in the zoning. You have to allow the application, but it doesn't meet. I mean, for instance, I even think you're not supposed to remove trees, and you're not supposed to change the slope, and you're not supposed to pollute the water, and it does all those things.
Mhm.
So it could be denied on any number of points, not because it's a distribution center. I think that the signs that say no distribution center in Churchill, yeah, that's wrong. Don't say that. But what they meant is it's not just Amazon. So I think the signs, people read the signs and think we're all stupid, we're saying stupid things. I've seen a lot of comments online like that, but that's not really what we're saying. You have to look at what the comments that people actually make at the meetings are very different. But it's very hard to make a sign to express what you want. So I think it's false to say that we have to approve this application just because it's allowed. That's completely false. It has to meet all the zoning requirements, and it doesn't. It violates a whole bunch of them.
Can you mention some of those, Susan, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I just did.
But on your public comments on the commission meeting, on the council workshop meeting, you mean? But you know, you mean you just did right now? Yeah.
Right,
Okay.
yeah.
Someone's waving their hand, and that
Yeah.
is Robert.
Yes, I am. I'm interested in this.
There's some feedback.
Pose it. And I'm a Penn Hiller. And can you hear me?
There's some feedback.
Sorry. I'll write it. I was gonna say again, why does council, now that they know how bad it is, why do they want it? I'll mute now.
Okay. Yes, I see a number of your comments.
Yeah, I don't know.
Question.
I think we don't know. You know, we have a sense of where council might stand, but we don't know for sure. But once, I think someone mentioned the zoning requirement, that once it was accepted, now you have to defend it. Once council decided to allow Hillwood to change the text amendment, now Hillwood is in a position where they can sue the borough. And the only thing you have now at your defense is that they meet all the conditional use requirements. That's their only defense at this point. Because once council accepts those conditional uses, then Hillwood can move forward, is my understanding of it. So I think council is now at a point they cannot just say no unless they can prove that Hillwood is unable to meet those conditional use that are required.
And Lois, it looks like you want to speak.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I just wanted to understand better than what I did here. I read through their use table, which is how you see that it would fall underneath conditional use. And in terms of being in the right district, I can't see where it's not, because they've allowed for that district to have that type of operation. They changed that at the end of last year. Therefore, they met the requirements, but with conditions. And so the next question was, I thought it was going to go in front of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission works to outline with whoever the planner is, what those conditions have to be. And then if they can meet all of the conditions, that would qualify them, in my understanding, they would have to vote for it. That is why I asked under what conditions were listed under that, because they must be working on these conditions if they're the Planning Commission, right?
Yeah, they're posted. The ones that they've come up with so far are posted, but they don't just have to meet the conditions, they have to meet basic. If you look at Article 5, okay, it's Article 5 is conditional uses. And there's a whole bunch of things that they have to meet that are basic general things that they have to meet. This particular project doesn't meet them. There could be a distribution center that met them, but this one is going to increase the impervious area. And the water pollution from that is worse than it was. It's not supposed to be. You might say, well, hasn't anybody noticed? Well, they have not submitted a water quality report. Why haven't they? They just chose not to. They didn't from the start when they made a list of it. It's one of the requirements. It's one of the requirements of the conditional use. Nobody's checking that they've done it or not. That's in my article. That's in my.
Yeah, I wonder what I was reading were the studies that were, I outlined a bunch of them for the people that I was speaking with a couple of Tuesdays ago. And under the ones that I was reading, the best practices would have to reduce the water runoff by a percentage. They would have to improve that. That would be one of the requirements. And according to the studies that were performed, they did that. So they either falsified their information and they really didn't meet those, but those studies were there to examine. That's why I gathered all that information for you.
Well, that's rate, that's flow rate. That's not water quality.
Well, no, I'm not talking about water quality. I'm talking about reducing the sheet flow, improving it by a certain percentage. But I guess, did they not require them to do any water quality baseline measurements?
It's required by the code. They haven't submitted a water quality report.
Okay.
And they put some water quality calculations in their stormwater report. But if you look at the last hearing, you'll see Elizabeth Kassman pointing out that they put in artificial numbers, and there's no way that you can meet no pollution with the way they've increased the impervious.
They falsified numbers?
You'll have to look at the details. Why don't you, the thing is to stick around for Elizabeth Kassman's case. But yeah, the numbers that are in the report are false. That's right. But they say it's because the software didn't let us put in the right ones. But Elizabeth Kassman says, well, yeah, you could have. But the point is that the numbers that they used for the water filler were 100% effectiveness. And it just made it look like everything was taken out, and no filter does that. So that's how they got it. So, but that's going to be challenged, and there's no way that they can meet that. So there may be a distribution center that could meet all the conditions, but this particular one does not. And the point is to get that out, because if you don't get the facts out, yeah, we'll probably be saddled with it. So that's why people are working so hard.
Yeah.
Jill has her hand raised, unless you had a comment on that, Sandy.
No, go ahead, Jillian.
Hi, so great work with everything you've done so far. I attended the first hearing. I'm a former Churchill resident. I lived on Greensburg Pike.
Wow.
I can tell you the pollution there was already bad. One of the reasons why we moved, because the pollution was so bad, we couldn't open our windows at night without smelling fumes in the morning. And our house was covered in soot from the pollution. So I can tell you the pollution's already bad. And I'm wondering if there is a way well, I know there's a way to do some air quality studies for what the pollution is like right now in Greensburg Pike, if you have some residents that live there. But you know, your story is so familiar because it's the story that I've lived through since I moved off of Greensburg Pike here to Westmoreland County, and trying to fight shale gas development. So it's a pretty, you know, it's a story that I've gone through before, and I can tell you just from the stuff that we've dealt with Protect BT, you know, if you can submit an expert report of what the water quality deficiencies are, that is going to go a long way to combating and supplementing any kind of testimony from the experts at the industry. I did think it was, I know Dwight Ferguson a little bit. I had a zoning event with him before, and I thought that he did a good job of, you know, when the exec from Amazon came up and was talking about the, you know, the great jobs. And then I think Sandy, you were the one that asked him about the article. And because this was known as he opened the door. So if they open the door, you're allowed to walk through it.
Right.
And I thought it was great that Dwight pointed that out. But you know, I don't know if you all, especially for your objectors that are residents in particular, have really specific questions that point to the flaws that are in the plans right now, because that is how you're going to prove that it does not meet the code. That, and with supplementing those expert reports. And so Susan, I mean, if this is your area of expertise, or someone that you know that has the area of expertise to submit this report, that's ideal. Now, yes, you will be cross-examined by the developer, but I found that when that happens, they're usually not expecting the residents to have all their ducks in a row. They're not expecting to have to, you know, to get such quality work from residents when talking about things that are missing in their proposals. So these are all things that, if properly cross-examined on, you could make them look really bad just by simply pointing out the flaws in their plan. And we did this one trick that was actually pretty effective at one hearing that we had, where we knew that there was a whole list of flaws in a developer's plan, and we had all these things that were missing, right? Like Susan, you pointed out that the water quality report is missing, and we wrote all this down, and we every time, and we had one person from our group read a list of things that was missing, and then everyone held a sign. And by the end of the person speaking, we had about 20 signs up of things that we identified that were missing. Now, the township still approved it. However, that allowed us to appeal it. And so, you know, these are all things that are really important when going through this process. And I know I've talked to Ruthie about some of this stuff, and you know, that's you know, kind of the best advice that I can give for how to tackle these issues that you have, you know, so diligently identified in their plans.
Jillian, I like your suggestion. I wish we had a public forum where we could actually hold signs, or even, you know, we don't have the visuals of the residents on this webinar format to do that, which is unfortunate. Susan, you were about to say something.
You just gave me an idea. We could have sort of a shadow meeting of the audience on Facebook Live or something like that at the same time that it's going on, and transmit that. Yeah, I was going to say that if you're interested, Jillian, and you want to give us more advice, this document that we came up with, a whole bunch of technically qualified people. We have a whole bunch of PhDs and technical people in this group. It's on the website, on Churchill's website, under Elizabeth Kassman, Kasman. she authored it, but it's a whole bunch of different people reviewed all the reports. Like we had a group that did that, and you'll see the actual technical things. Now, if you have comments to make about here, you should have an expert person. Here, you need a reference. Here, be more specific. Whatever that would, go ahead. We're open to any help that you want to give us. That's a collaborative document. That's where it has, for instance, the part about the water quality statements being false, and they were sworn to by Hillwood people. I mean, by Langen, by Hillwood's engineers.
And I have another question really quick. I'm sorry. So have you all had someone that is an expert in air quality look over this air quality plan?
And the answer is, I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay.
Ralph or Susan, do you know?
I'm not-
anyone has hired an air
I'm not
quality?
sure, but I thought that the White said he was going to have, he may have said that he's going to have a guy from Colorado, air quality expert,
Okay,
will testify.
okay.
Don't quote me on that, but I do think that's what he said at one of the meetings.
All right.
Did you have a suggestion? Did you have somebody to suggest?
Well, I had suggested a couple people to Ruthie that are local, but I'm not sure if anyone was available. Matt Mihalik from the Breathe Project is excellent. I'm not sure if that's the type of thing that he would do for this situation. I don't know if he, if he does that type of work.
We spoke with Matt, Ruthie and I. We met with him for about an hour, and he showed us where to get the data from the EPA website, and Ruthie acquired that. And he also recommended that we contact Debbie Gentile.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
did, and we're going to call her as an expert witness, Ruthie and I.
She's excellent.
So she will have slides on air quality presently,
Okay.
according to the EPA, within a 2-mile radius of the site. And she will then talk about, as a physician and an expert in respiratory illnesses in children and asthma. And she's done research at Woodland Hills High School on their rates of asthma. So, that was a great resource that you pointed us to, the Breathe Project. So we really appreciate that. Yeah, when I was reading the air quality report, the draft report, which was the first version, and then the later report, the draft version said that this project will not result in or contribute in air pollution in the area. Just ludicrous claim, even before the figures were projected.
Yeah.
That, and I will say that the borough of Churchill hired someone, they hired Gateway Engineering to look at the reports, and Gateway hired a group called TRC Environmental Corporation, which is out of New England, to review the environmental report. Okay, so they did do that. And on the comment that I just mentioned, TRC's comment was, the predicted air quality impacts of the project plus background concentrations do not exceed a national ambient air quality standards or an air toxic standards. However, the project will result in air emissions and contribute to air pollution in the area. And the response from Epsilon, the air quality expert hired by the developer, was none, wrote none. Now, they have objected and defended their positions on other things, but for that, they had no comment. So that is one of my areas on my cross-examination, but I imagine that it'll be asked before I get to it. It's so blatant. These reports are really astonishingly transparent in terms of how they are trying to defend the indefensible, in my opinion. Maren asked a question that makes me think of you, Susan. Do you see it? I don't know. Solar, for that matter, can and should be done on top of buildings that can house any number of other activities. Whether that can work with the current buildings, I don't know. Would be great if they could be repurposed. I'm not familiar with the existing facility. I think this is right up your alley.
Yeah,
Susan.
that's a very good point, that it doesn't really necessarily displace anything. But if the borough, I think the borough keeps saying, you know, things have to change. We have to develop that. And do we really? I mean, isn't it okay being used for filming? Is there anything wrong with that? I mean, it's a green space. We found out recently that the parkway itself and the Churchill interchange to the parkway is a historical, is eligible for the register of historical register, whatever. So the point is that they can't really change the interchanges. Now, if you've seen those quaint little interchanges on and off the parkway at Churchill, you may wonder, why didn't they ever upgrade this? I think that's why. They have to leave the interchange pretty much the way it was. They can't widen the bridge. If that's the case, it doesn't make sense to choose the Churchill interchange to put a truck generator, is what they call these things. And so I think, you know, maybe this impression people have been under, I think from the county, the 2 letters of support are from Rick Fitzgerald and Jay Costa. I think the county has sort of thought that they need to bring something there, and I'm not sure they've thought it through, but there is that pressure. And then we have to ask why. I just went to Ecological Society of America's had a special session today on urban patches of forest. And they were talking how important these are. And this would qualify things that are like, you know, 40, 50 acres. And, you know, these are considered, you know, just wonderful resources. People would not give them up. And so I think maybe a change in thinking about that place is what we need.
Yeah.
I'm gonna jump in. We have 8 minutes left. And I know that there are some folks who are new and haven't said anything yet. Lorraine, Joe, Darcel. Is anyone else here new that I'm missing? Robert is new. Yeah, if you have a question in the chat or want to unmute yourselves.
Well, you guys, I don't think I'm new, but I'm always interested in what's going on across the country here. And I am all the way across the country from you. But it sounds like you have the same issues that we've got going up here with even water rights. So, you know, I'm just interested in hearing how other parts of the country deal with the conspiracy of money that wants to run roughshod across the country. John Sonnen up in Douglas, Alaska. Sorry.
The conspiracy of money. Ralph, you want to take that on at all? Any thoughts on that? You're on mute.
I may have his question again. My phone was ringing in the background, so I muted it because my answer machine was on. I didn't hear his question.
There was a comment about the conspiracy of money. Is there a conspiracy of money here? Did I get that right, John? Did I sum it up okay?
Yeah, it's the conspiracy of those who seek to gain at all cost, and they might pretend public service, but they're actually always spending everything so that they are the ones who get the better end of the stick. That's the conspiracy of money.
Mm.
Yeah, I can't really speak to that. I don't know for sure. I mean, I think that's always a concern, and these kind of large money projects. I do think that I think what I was really appalled by, for one example, is when Hillwood came on board, they said they didn't want tax abatements and they didn't want grant money. And then they applied for a $10 million grant. And we had two different reasons why they did that. From Hillwood, they said it's because during the pandemic, the cost of lumber and construction materials had gone up. And they needed a $10 million grant from Pennsylvania to mitigate some of those costs. We heard from our senator that the reason they needed $10 million is because to remove the asbestos at the present site. So, which is true. Now they, at that time, I wrote to, I think his name was Chimka from the county.
Yeah.
I said, how would you give $10 million to an out-of-state investor from Dallas? $10 million of Pennsylvania's tax money to an out-of-state developer. A developer is a matching grant who's going to put up $10 million in cash. I said, that is unethical. They can put up $10 million in cash and you're going to match it. Now, Hillwood has since withdrawn that request. But my thinking is, why can't, if the reason that property cannot be used at this point is because of mitigating factors, environmental factors, why not take that $10 million and let Churchill Borough use it to mitigate that site, to make it marketable? You know, maybe it could be used for a mixed-use development with residential homes and some retail and professional offices, which would still bring in some revenue. But at the same time, it wouldn't destroy the character of the borough. So I think those are the kind of things that gall me when you're willing to give an out-of-state developer $10 million.
Mm-hmm. Well said. And I think the microgrid is not inconsistent with a multi-use arrangement for that property. You said that before, Susan. Yeah. I know we're almost out of time. I want to thank Annie for organizing this, and everyone. I'm sorry we didn't get to all the questions. Rich Fitzgerald did not respond to our request for a meeting, by the way. No surprise. He's very proud of this. He thinks it's a fantastic location for Amazon. Never mind that it's surrounded by residential homes and 3 schools. I worked at a hospital that just got a union, but it didn't help much. Amazon is just a bad place to work. Well, it is now. So any last comments? Annie, I'll let you wrap it up.
I just want to thank everyone for being here. I'm definitely going to be at the hearing next Monday to see how it goes. And yeah, if you need anything in the meantime, let me know. Tomorrow, everyone will receive an email from me with this recording. And
we also have a protest. I'm sorry to interrupt. I forgot to mention at 6 to 7 p.m. The hearing starts at 8 p.m. next Monday, August 9th. There's a protest in front of the Borough building from 6 to 7. We would welcome any of you, all of you, anyone who feels similarly about this not belonging in Churchill or frankly in any residential neighborhood. Sorry to interrupt, but I thought I'd throw that in.
If there's anything else that the 3 of you want to share with everyone, you can send it to me if you think of it after the fact, or yeah, whatever. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and congrats on all the news coverage you've been getting.
Yes, that's been good.
Yeah.
We hope it continues.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for all you've done to help us, Annie.
Yeah, KDKA is like religiously following it every day.
Yeah,